Okay guys, we're gonna try something a little different today. We are gonna do a director's cut of our building in 10 minutes videos, which have become very popular on YouTube, and we think that this is a cool angle for us to kind of give you guys some insight as to what was going on while we were building these cars, because the 10-minute videos kind of leave that stuff out. Okay, so as you guys know, I was looking for an FD RX-7 for a long time, and as would have it, one of my buddies actually had one that he had been holding on to for a number of years, had sent off to get built, ended up getting abandoned at a paint shop basically. He finally decided it was time to get rid of it. So he reached out to a friend of mine who reached out to me and said, hey, I think this is the one for you, go check it out. So I did that. TJ and I went up there to LA and found the car, found it in a bad state, and decided to make an offer on it because I figured it was just what we needed here at Throtl to make an awesome car. Man, this brings back some memories. I remember when we were cleaning it out for the first time, how filthy dirty I was when I went home. I took a shower and the water was black. Ah, the 5-spoke wheels that everyone loved. These wheels were only meant to be temporary. Most of you guys don't know that. This was a set of wheels that we actually had for Courtney's S14, the one that you guys see in a lot of the background of our videos. Those were from that car. They happened to be sitting at the shop. I knew they fit an FD. So I wanted to get those old 5-spokes off that came on the car, which had a lot of heritage. I wasn't sure if I was going to reuse those or sell them. I ended up selling them. So those AMEs served as a placeholder until I found my ultimate wheel, which is the Advan SA3R. I love that wheel for the car, and we even found them in red. The Advan SA3Rs that I actually found, the specific set that I found, have quite a story, and that's something that I didn't get to tell many people on our YouTube channel or even through our social media outlets. Those wheels are actually the wheels off of Nobuteru Taniguchi's S15 that used to run in the D1 series, and they were then returned to Volk Racing or Mackin here in the US, and then they were given off to Ken Gushi for his Scion TC rear-wheel drive drift car that competed in Formula Drift. They were then sold with the car to my friend Tony Angelo, who lives back in Pennsylvania. You might know him from Hot Rod Garage. I then reached out to the interwebs and asked if anybody knew of any for sale. Tony reached out to me and said, hey, I'm no longer going to be using this drift car. I've retired. I have all of these wheels sitting here that I'd like to sell. Are you interested? Yes, absolutely. Why would you not buy wheels that have a history like that? So I am honored to have those wheels, and every time I see them on the Bad Apple, I just think it's the perfect fit. And one of my favorite gifts I've ever gotten in my lifetime, the Tane Flexes for the FD. Those were courtesy of Throtl, and are actually still on the car. Out with the old, in with the new. Man, I almost forgot we repainted this car. The color is so close. This was actually one of my most memorable things when building this car, was taking everything apart, sanding it all down, cleaning it all up, and I got to spend a lot of time early on with Ricky before he was actually a staple in our shop, and also my father, Big Jeff, who helped tremendously to get the undercarriage of this car to my liking. So I'm happy to say he has the same OCD level that I do. Here we are removing the gas tank. This was a massive project for this car, being that it sat for so long. The gas tank needed to be completely scrubbed and resealed inside because it was rusty. So we went ahead and did all that with the Por 15. Turned out awesome. Oh man, and here's the day the car started for the first time after sitting for 12 years. And we found out that it had terminal engine failure. Unfortunately, there was oil in the coolant, and that means the seals were bad. So out with the engine. And Ricky and I, later in the video, I'll actually take it apart. But while we did this, we actually rebuilt the transmission, which was pretty cool, at least the shifter mechanism and all the moving parts that were there, which is a must when you take the thing apart. I think it's a good idea to rebuild those items. New leather goods for the interiors. And there's Big Jeff, little cameo. This is us pulling out the heater core, air conditioning unit, all the interior actually. He and I spent a day doing that. We moved on to vacuuming the floor, making new floor pads, and putting the carpet in. There's Ricky for his first cameo in the show. This was when Ricky was only working for us periodically. Oh, look at that dashboard. For me, the interior of the car is the most important. It's where you spend most of your time, or the majority of your time, while you're enjoying that vehicle. So for me, getting a clean, almost new interior in this RX-7 was paramount. So here we have the donor seats that we got. Those were also found online. $300 for the pair. Sent them off to SOS Customs, had them reupholstered as you guys saw in the video. So this is the first cameo of the engine out of the car after we found out it was blown up. The first task at hand for Ricky and I was just to blow the thing apart and see what was wrong with it. And we found out that it was, in fact, all of the seals were just destroyed, rotted from sitting for so long. Man, looking back at this right now, this is a crazy day at the shop. I think when you're in the moment, you don't realize it. We had guests in the shop, John from JSP Fab, his son. Looks like McGuire's was in the house detailing TJ's Supra. I see Rick's 68 Porsche torn into bits over there. Man, we had a lot going on at this time. I didn't realize it, but here we are. At this point, we pulled it apart and took all the parts up to DNA Garage to have them cleaned and rebuilt. Well, here we are. We've arrived at DNA Garage, where we disassembled the rest of the motor and basically cataloged all the parts and put them in bins so that we could rebuild the engine when the time came. But we had to get it cracked open to figure out what was actually going on inside. As you can see here, I'm drilling a hole in the door, and you're probably wondering why. If you didn't watch the series, it's because I actually had to drill holes to run wiring from the power mirror switch out to the fender area for the wing mirrors. One of the things that a lot of you guys don't like about the car that I love. Big Jeff, myself, and Doug rolling the car off the trailer at BCC Unlimited. This is where the project of getting the car basically sanded down and resprayed and doing the modifications to the body that I wanted to do. So this was a process that was supposed to go pretty quick, only a few weeks, turned into 2 to 2.5 months, I believe, which was fine. The amount of work that needed to be done to the car was way more than what we had anticipated. Once we started sanding down the paint, we found a lot of flaws in the body underneath that had been repaired poorly, but we weren't gonna leave it like that. We went ahead and actually pulled everything out, flattened the car out, and the guys at BCC Unlimited crushed it on the bodywork. So now you can see why it took a little extra time at the body shop. They actually took the car down to bare metal. It's always the best way to do it, and a lot of times body shops will cut corners and not do that. But BCC Unlimited wasn't gonna let this thing leave their shop with any stones unturned, so huge shout out to them. They crushed it on this one. And then I immediately backed it into a trailer. The Mazda red that we chose, which is called Soul Crystal Metallic, number 46V. They did the jams first, which is the proper way to paint a car. That way you go back and spray the outside over top of the jams. And then we're off to DNA Garage to start porting the engine. This porting process on the 13B for me was one of the coolest things that I've ever experienced. I've been around a lot of car builds and a lot of very knowledgeable people in the car space, but seeing John work his magic on this porting, I think was one of the larger learning experiences I've ever had. Seeing how he just kind of knew what to do because he'd done it a million times. Me seeing it for the first time, I was pretty blown away. So while the engine was at DNA Garage, Ricky and I actually went back to our shop and cleaned up all the stuff that bolts onto the engine. So as you know, the 13B or any rotary engine goes together in plates basically, but you have all these other parts that bolt onto it. Well, for sitting for so long and the car being so old, the parts were very dirty and filthy. So we went through and cleaned them all up, used the blast cabinet, and actually refinished pretty much every part on the engine. So here's John assembling the engine after all of the porting work was done. For me, this was probably the best part of this project, and this was pretty much the main reason why I wanted to get an FD RX-7, was because I wanted to experience the engine build process of a rotary engine, particularly a ported and built rotary engine. So I looked forward to this day for a long time, and I remember like it was yesterday. It was one of the best experiences I've had in building a car, and I will be doing it again on the 20B. So I'm really looking forward to that. You guys probably noticed the pink R's that are on the rotor housings themselves, and those are actually put on there from Mazda themselves when they box these up. It means rear rotor. So one thing that most people don't know is that the rear rotor, for whatever reason, is a little bit less expensive than the front rotor housings, and they're virtually identical. You can actually use 2 rear housings instead of using a front and a rear. Save yourself some money. So here's John assembling basically the oil pump and all the front end of the engine stuff, basically finalizing the assembly. This was again another late night. Here we have our built to apex oil pan going on, which adds a little capacity. It's a pretty nice pan, billet aluminum. Ooh, and our action clutch. So this is a twin plate clutch, and it's actually worked out really well in the car. I actually really enjoy this clutch. It's not too heavy. It grabs really well, almost too well. As you can see here, one of the things I always wanted to have on one of my builds was a Rywire wiring harness, or just a custom wiring harness in general. Ryan has become a really good friend of mine over the years, and so this was a great opportunity for us to work with Ryan and also help him expand outside of the Honda community, which he's very well known in, and basically open up his product line to the rotary community. And we got our 13B back at throttle now. Another cool part of the process was figuring out how to mount all the sensors and things that went along with our Haltech system, putting them in places where we could cleanly route the wiring harness. As you can see here, there's a little bit of extra wiring that is there because the harness was meant for a stock engine configuration. When we added sensors and things like that, we had to take care and actually tidy everything up really nice, zip tie it, push it off to the side so it wasn't visible. And I think we did a really good job. It turned out really nice, and the sensor mounting looks really good. And at this point, we're starting to see the engine come together. We're starting to see all of the parts that we've been collecting come into one place and start to go into the black engine bay, which I think the contrast of the black bay with the nice clean parts and silver repaint on everything was basically perfect in my opinion. It shows off all of the cool bits that we were able to purchase for this car and really showcase it well inside the engine bay. So one of the things I really enjoy about building cars is actually the plumbing and routing of all of the systems that it takes in order to keep a car running and operating properly. This was the process of the build that I actually enjoyed the most, which was putting all the plumbing in, making all the AN lines and fittings. It was a blast. So as you guys can see, we had already started on the V-mount setup on this car, and we had originally used basically kind of an off-the-shelf V-mount. And that was a really nice kit, came from Rotary Works. It was definitely adequate for what we were trying to do. However, I really wanted a more visual effect when you pop the hood. I really wanted to include some titanium parts and also some HD clamps and things like that instead of just rubber couplers and worm gear clamps. So we did go ahead and order up an intercooler core from Garrett. We ordered our own custom end tanks for them that we welded on over at IlkFab and created all of this custom piping and setup basically out of our own minds. So this is really special to me because it's something that we created. It's not something that we just hit a button and said order. These pieces were all custom made specifically for this car. And there you have the first drive of the Bad Apple on the city streets of, I guess that's Santa Ana, outside the shop at DNA Garage. This was the first time I ever actually took the car on the public road, which was a little nerve-wracking, but was a success. And this is, I think, when I started to realize that I really like those 19-inch wheels on the FD. Now here we are back at BCC Unlimited for the final assembly of the car. You can see all the guys standing outside. The car was there for, like I said, a few months, 2 months, and everyone in that shop had a hand on the car basically. So when I did bring it up there and it was finally completed, there was a lot of hugs and handshakes going around because everybody was really proud of the work that they did. All right guys, well that about concludes the 10-minute video. I hope there was some cool bits of information in there that you guys didn't already know about the car. Well, it's been about a year since we finished this car up, and I've been enjoying it. I drive it once a week or so down to the shop or just cruise it on the weekends, and it has been a joy to own, and it's everything that I wanted it to be. We have made some changes to the car since this video was created, and that's obviously we added the wheels. I've also created a new hood for the car that allows air to come out through the hood, active ventilation for the V-mount and the turbocharger. And so the car has started to go through some more changes. In the beginning, I think I mentioned to you guys that the car was going to have a V1 and a V2 basically. We've started the stages of V2 at this point. Aside from the hood, we did obviously put the HREs off of the S14 coupe on the car as well for a short period of time. They're still on today, but they'll be coming back off because the SA3Rs are going to be back on the car. Aside from that, we'll probably update the body kit a little bit. I need to have some of the damage done on the body from when I backed into TJ's trailer repaired. So this car will go back in and get all that stuff repaired and added to the car at that point in time. I'm looking forward to showing you guys what I think the car should look like in its version 2 state, and is really how I wanted the car to look straight out of the gate. But I wanted to do the previous owner a solid and put the car back together the way he originally envisioned it. And so we've done that now, and it's time to move on to the version 2, my view of how the car should have always looked. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little director's cut and got a little more insight into the bad apple that maybe you didn't already know. We'll see you guys in the next video. If you guys like these director's cuts, please give us a comment down below. Let us know which car we should do next.